we in a buyer's market? As the Fed comes out and drops a point another quarter, all arrows pointing to a strong economy and everything that we've been waiting for, the lower interest rates and all the things on the mortgage side, might not come to fruition. So what's that mean for buyers? Is this a massive opportunity? Are you somebody who's been stuck in a home because you have that low interest rate? Maybe you've built up some debt, or have you been sitting on the sidelines waiting to get into a home? Well, if that's any of you, if you raise your hand or you're just curious, stay tuned because we're going to talk about it. And the 4 C's are important, and that's what the buyer has in their favor at this moment right now. What's up, guys? I'm Jeremy Kane with eXp Realty, living in the Denver suburbs over on YouTube. If you are here for the first time or you're watching on Facebook or Instagram, please make sure you like the video, tell me you're here, and let's dive into this. But definitely engage, like, comment, friend me, do all the things because I bring information like this, strategies on the market, living in Denver, as well as market updates weekly here on this episode. So let's get into this piece. So I was at this training just yesterday. It was a mastermind, top producing agents led by one of the top lenders in the state. And I'm actually using a slide that he had in his presentation. So shout out to Gavin Ekstrom with Cross Country Mortgage. Bought me a filet, which is always awesome at Del Fresco's, and had a really good presentation. So he was comparing 2020, 2021 to today. Right? In 2020 and 2021, buyers were seeing that they had to overpay for homes. There was less inventory, which meant more competition. There was no negotiations, oftentimes having to, raise your price to get a contract accepted. There was no concessions. You could get a appraisal, but if it was low, the seller wasn't going to do anything because they could just say no and go to the next buyer, get a new appraisal or no appraisal, and move forward. Right? There was no inspection, negotiations for the most part. People weren't doing any of the super, things that we would consider major health and safety because they just didn't have to. Again, they could say no, and the buyer would be back out in the shark pool, and they would have a bunch of sharks jumping at their home. So that was a thing. Competing with cash, right? The investors were hot and heavy, coming in, throwing cash around, being able to close quickly because they were just in it and the market was where they wanted it to be. And it was difficult to get an offer. If you were a first-time home buyer, maybe had an FHA loan, or you're a vet and had a VA loan, some of those things were pushed to the side because the truth is, on an appraisal, if there's chipping paint on an FHA loan, they might have the seller repaint. They don't want to repaint. So as we move forward here, that's what was going on in 2020, 2021. I can tell you every single one of those things happened on 90% of my transactions in that time frame. Fast forward to now. Right? There is much more inventory. We're seeing pre-pandemic levels of inventory currently in our market. We didn't see a major fall off as we head into December like we usually do. The higher interest rates have led them to not be approvable. There's more negotiation power, right? You can negotiate an appraisal. You can negotiate an inspection. Seller is also paying for you to buy their home through concessions or price reductions. So, and the ability to actually order the appraisal and have the appraisal and order the inspection, have the inspection. None of my buyers ever waived their full right to an appraisal if it was needed or their full right to an inspection. However, the right to object to it was oftentimes in question in some of those offers in order to get them accepted. And so you see the contrast in value. So some would say, well, it's a buyer's market. The market's about to crash. The sellers. That's not what I'm talking here, right? I'm talking about the things that we saw then and the things that we have now, right? And so the 4 C's of what the buyers are in the buyer's favor. And the first is control, right? The buyers have the opportunity to look at a home, maybe look at it twice, look at the home down the street, compare the two. There's a much slower, less intense piece of what's going on, right? So yes, and sellers are saying, okay, what's your feedback? Okay, we can do that. They're willing to negotiate. So the first C is control. The second C is concessions, right? Sellers are paying an incentive if you bring an offer to them that is acceptable. And sometimes they're offering concessions on the listing, but even if they're not, they're much more willing to take a concession and give it to the buyer. What is a concession? A concession can go towards your closing costs, your prepaids. It can buy down your interest rate. So there's people that are sitting on the sideline because the rates are at 6, not understanding that the seller will buy their rate into an acceptable rate with a concession in most cases, right? And this isn't happening across the board. The perfect house that's underpriced is going to have multiple offers, but most are not, right? We're seeing 20, 30, 40 days. But the buyers, on the other hand, have been conditioned when things come on the market to get out there and see it. The agents are getting them out there. They're quick to respond. They're quick to turn that over. And so now the buyers are looking at it, still that first weekend, still the highest amount of showings, but then they're thinking about it, right? So those concessions are something that people don't really understand are actually the bridge to getting you into a home in a lower rate that's more acceptable to you, even though you know what you're seeing on the internet and what you're seeing on YouTube is a higher rate. Right? And then contingencies, right? These are the appraisals, the inspections, the contingencies that contracts typically stand on. You can actually ask for repairs. We can actually, if an appraisal comes in low, we're seeing more negotiation, the seller willing to come down. Because in reality, if they're not going to negotiate at that time and the buyer walks away because they have this other house down the road that they can go see and buy, they don't want to lose that buyer. So they're like, okay, yeah, what do you need at inspection? You need that rate on, you need this, you need that. Let's keep a deal together. Let's get this deal done, right? And then choice, right? That's the biggest thing, because if it doesn't work out for the buyer right here, right now, they can go to the next house because the inventory is there. Not to say that, every house is created equal or whatever, but if you go down the road and the house has been sitting on the market for 2 weeks, that seller might be willing to negotiate. Probably is, right? And you can say, well, I was under contract for this over here. You go into that conversation, boom, go under contract. And then if there's something that comes up, you can negotiate that. So you have the choice. So control, concessions, contingencies, and choice as the buyer right now are the 4 C's that are in your favor. And the truth is, everything on the left side of that list that was 2020 through 2021, overpaying, we're not doing that. You can offer lower, less inventory. There's more inventory, which means there's less competition because there's less buyers because the interest rates are high, and more houses to look at means supply and demand are equaling out at the very, very least, right? You couldn't negotiate, now you can. You couldn't get a concession, they wouldn't even, consider it, now you can. You couldn't get an appraisal. If the appraisal came in low, you had to bring the cash, or you had to walk away from $2,000 that you spent on the inspection and the appraisal. Now you can, right? Competing with cash. The investors have slowed down their role on buying as well. And getting an offer accepted, FHA, VA, some chipping paint, that buyer's going to say, okay, yeah, if that comes at it, or that seller's going to say, okay, at appraisal, if that comes up, we'll take care of it, right? So you have all of those things. So don't forget those 4 C's. So let's talk about this, right? They did just lower the Fed rate today, 1/4 point. What that means is the economy's, kind of picking up a little bit stronger. They're feeling like they're trying to get that. They're trying to spur it up a little bit and inspire the economy. The jobs numbers haven't changed. Inflation is going up, which usually is when they raise the rate, but they didn't, because they're kind of in a rock and a hard place because they've got us in this position where they held it for so long that they need to do what they've projected to do to keep everyone inspired. Then you have a new president that everyone in the economic side of the world, the Bitcoin, the cryptos going crazy, seem to be pretty excited about. What's that mean? Typically, a strong economy means higher rates because there's all kinds of other factors. While a strong economy is absolutely amazing for the housing market and what's going on because people are making more money, they're doing more transactions, they're willing to move up and so on, the interest rates are not something that usually benefits from a strong economy. So as we kind of push this down the road, what's that mean? Rates are going to be higher for longer. Buyers aren't going to wait forever. We saw the day after the election that people were like, okay, that's behind us, whether they were happy, sad, whatever, people were willing to make moves, right? So we saw a jump in buyers at that time, right? Now that's kind of fallen off. Now the rates are high. Now in the news, rates are high, rates are high, rates are high. What they don't understand is that this will not last forever. The buyers will not sit on the sidelines. Once the buyers come out, there's more competition, right? Once the sellers don't have to make the deal and, make the deal as sweet as humanly possible for the buyer. Let's keep in mind though, the sellers still had a massive appreciation from 2017 to 2024, right? So we're talking about a deal, but when we're talking the grand scheme of things, most of the sellers, if you didn't buy in 20 and 2021 at the highest and overpay, are walking away from the closing table with pretty good checks, even with concessions, helping the buyer buy down their rate, even with, price reductions and all the things. What's that mean? We'll definitely see an inventory increase in the spring. And so when that happens, usually there's more buyers out, there's more people, more leases end up around that time, so there's more competition, right? How quickly will that inventory be eaten up? We'll see. But what I'm telling you is, for right now, don't worry about the interest rates, because you have the opportunity to get them into sustainable levels just with the opportunity that you have within the 4 C's. Control, concessions, contingencies, and choice. These are the 4 C's that are making buyers' lives way easier. And don't worry, sellers, this video right here is to inspire buyers to come out and hit you up and bring an offer to you so you can do the transaction and you can move on with your life and everyone is happy. So if you like anything I said, if you have any questions about anything I said, please comment below, shoot me a DM on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you follow. But other than that, have a good night. Getting close to Christmas, so make sure that you're spending some time with your family, and let's go get it. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.